We are here for our mid-July Patreon crowdcast and doing something a little bit different like we sometimes do because I know a lot of really cool people that I'd like to introduce you to. And this is Conor Lastowka of RiffTrax.
Hey everybody, thank you for having me on, Jackson.
Oh, it is.
It would be weird if you didn't, since, you know, you're in my home.
Yeah, which incidentally has a butler, which is great. I'm so thrilled to have a little touch of home here. We actually met in a kind of unusual way because it was in a random conference hotel in LA when we both were trying out for Jeopardy.
Yeah, it was Culver City, I believe.
Okay, Culver City, sure.
And that's the hotel that I think you go back to and stay when you're in Jeopardy.
Oh,
like I walked in there and I was like,
well, I wouldn't know that, but you would. Right?
Yeah, that was a fun day. That was the second time I tried out in person.
Oh, okay.
The first one had probably been 10 years earlier. And I think what doomed me on that one was like walking in and like, you know, I had driven up from San Diego 2.5 hours, sort of like filled out the forms and like handed it to some guy and was like, you know, there you go. Wasn't rude per se, but like wasn't like, you know, again, the performance like, hey, happy to be here.
Right,
and then,
right.
You know, he's the guy running the show and it's like,
yeah, too brusque, whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, then we showed up in that room and they do like a fake little game. And part of the fake, I mean, I was telling my wife Lauren earlier, it's not to gauge your charisma. Because if you've ever seen Jeopardy, you know, that's not really a prerequisite to like getting on the air. I think it's to gauge whether you could string like 3 words together without like melting in a pile of sweat. Like,
so did I fail? I still don't know. But that was October when we tried out. It was, I think, October 2014. Does that sound right to your memory?
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Like early October, maybe late September 2014. And I remember because you were up there doing the fake Trebek dialogue.
Yep,
right?
the mid-round interview.
Yeah, because Trebek isn't actually there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I heard you say something like, I write for a website that you might or might not have heard of called RiffTrax. I'm back there.
It was one of the few times that, like, you know, I tell people what I do and there's someone who's like, you know, not only like, yeah, you know, I've heard of that, but someone who's like engaged and, you know, wanted to talk about it afterwards. A lot of times it's just like blank stares or you see in their eyes that they think I'm making it up. Like,
right. Sure.
I started telling people, I started changing how I describe it to people like in the past year to say like comedy production company as opposed to like website. So I'd just say website and they'd be like, I think he's lying and he works for like pornography type of thing. So.
Right. Or they're like, I have a blog.
Right, exactly. It just sounds a little more legitimate. It's accurate, you know.
But you must meet huge fans sometimes too.
Yeah, I mean, usually not like when I like go to the neighbor's barbecue across the street. Like that's rare. Sure. But like, yeah, sure. In person, we've done stuff, you know, at our live shows or at VIP events or stuff like that, where you get to talk to people who are into it.
Well, and I was super into it because I started watching Mystery Science Theater as like a 10-year-old kid in the middle of Colorado, long before South Park put us on the comedy map. And I remember I had a friend who was like the funny guy in school.
Nice.
And he just loved MST3K and he was like, you gotta come watch this. And so we would just go and watch these things. And eventually I just kind of developed my own love for it. You know, I watched it on Comedy Central and then on Sci-Fi when it was on Sci-Fi. And then it went off the air and there was a period of darkness in my life. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
And then, you know, when I started teaching as a grad student, they had basically all of them were online by then, you know, legitimately or illegitimately.
Yes.
You could get them. And I would always watch them legitimately if I could, but there were a lot of episodes you couldn't. So
yeah.
I kind of stayed with the keep circulating the tapes thing.
Yeah, that was how I checked them out in the initial days too. Like just like when I, you know, met you know, Mike and started looking at him, I would be like on, I mean, it will date me, but like Easy News was a Usenet scraper, and I'd be like, I think one of the new ones popped up on there. Like, now I can check it out.
Right, or like Daily Motion or something.
Right.
Yeah. And I would actually, starting in grad school, when I was teaching classes, I would use them as my rewards for grading.
Oh, wow.
right? So like for every one of these that I watch, I grade, I'm going to watch like 5 minutes of a new Mr. PK episode, right? That was my little reward.
Wow.
And then when I found out about RiffTrax, which is not too long after it came out, exactly 15 years ago today.
It's the 50th anniversary. Yep.
The exact deliberate reason we're meeting.
Exactly, yeah. We released Roadhouse 15 years ago today.
Man, and it was just Mike, right?
Yep.
It was just Mike as the host.
Yep,
right?
we just sort of were like, let's see if this worked. He had moved to town. I don't think he had brought the rest of his family yet in case it didn't work out. But yeah, it was a weird little thing, and thankfully it caught on.
Well, what is the story then behind how RiffTrax itself started?
Well, yeah, so there was a company that I was working at. It was called Legend Films, and I had been there for maybe like 2 or 3 months. I had been out of college for a couple years, 2 years maybe, and had a job that I didn't care for, quit without having another job lined up, and then someone at Legend Films, which colorized movies.
Okay, like House on Haunted Hill.
House on Haunted Hill, Plan 9. They would do a lot of these, movies like Plan 9, B movies, House on Haunted Hill. It's fine. People will say it's not bad. It's not very good. And they would colorize them and sort of give them like a luxury DVD packaging. And then one of the bonuses, or a lot of the main selling points for people, was they would bring in Mike Nelson from MST3K, and he would do a commentary that was more of amusing rather than sitting there and trying to craft jokes. I think he would sort of find out funny things about the people and do that in a sort of DVD commentary style. So they had that relationship, and he decided to move down there to San Diego from Minneapolis, and they were going to try to make something work. And I think RiffTrax was always sort of the idea, but it was in the stage of just having that idea, but they were willing to sort of try to make it happen. And so I was there to sort of either mailing out DVDs to people or doing whatever lights, colorization work or editing they needed on the side.
And this is mid 2000s?
Yeah, I mean, so it must have been 2006. And he walked in the door, and I was like, well, I've got to hitch my horse to this wagon because this seems, everyone was nice, but it was you can only look at a Laurel and Hardy Babes in Toyland movie where you're fixing film grain on it for so long before you're well, maybe I shouldn't have quit the job at the glasses lens company. So I mean, he fortunately was didn't have any friends or anything in town, and so I was just being a friendly guy who seemed interested in comedy and in what he was trying to do there, was willing, I think, to have someone else sort of work with there. So it was a good match right away.
Cool. And so then Kevin and Bill came in kind of later, right?
Yeah, I mean, so he had maintained a relationship with those guys, and they had actually made a series of DVDs that were called The Film Crew, right, which sort of occupy this weird space in pre-RiffTrax, post-MST lore. They made these DVDs, and then I think there was an issue with the guy who owned the rights to MST, not wanting them to release them, or not wanting the DVD distributor who also released MST DVDs to distribute those. I think it was Rhino, and then it moved to Shout Factory type of thing.
I think I know who this guy is.
Okay, so they came out. I think after RiffTrax, but they had been in the can for a couple of years before that. So it was this weird sort of thing where we had just gotten this thing started, and then it was well, is this going to catch on? Is it going to sort of run this into the ground? But it never really went anywhere, I think, just because we had a good thing going with RiffTrax. So yeah, Kevin and Bill were still on board for that, and they started coming down to San Diego to do one-offs here and there, and sort of got into the fold sort of officially. It could have been 6 months. It could have been a year into it before they started sort of being on every release and doing all that.
And early on too, it seems like some interesting kind of one-offs with cool guests like Al Yankovic.
Yeah,
was on Jurassic Park, right?
Yeah, that was a real thrill. I mean, that was he was just someone that, I think everyone grew up listening to Weird Al, but UHF was just a sort of formative, just this is what a funny movie can be. I still love it. But we made a push to sort of get some guests, and he was I think the biggest get as far as I'm concerned. It just, it did really well. It was a great pick for a movie. And that was back when it was just me and Mike there. So to sort of just have that experience in probably 2007, I would say, as a 25-year-old being going to write these things and then go, actually in the booth with Weird Al to do them was a real thrill. And then he did a live show with us a couple of years later, and he appeared on the audiobook of one of my novels, just through that RiffTrax connection. So that's been sort of just one of those things where it's like, you got to try to play it cool, but it's like, well, this is when people talk about 10-year-old me being impressed by things, that's probably the ultimate.
10-year-old me is thrilled to be like 1 degree of connection from Weird Al. That's so awesome.
The nicest guy, and like just the most amazing switch flips to like performance mode. He's not walking in. A lot of people are comedians are sort of like just constantly like looking for the laugh and stuff, but just warm and kind, and then but then can launch into Weird Al voice like when the line read requires it, type of thing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I mean, not like I've also dealt with Hollywood types.
Yeah.
Like, some of them are weirdly on all the time.
Yeah, it's a little like it's just how they are, I guess, and that's probably why they're successful to some degree. But it can be off-putting when you're just like, can we just talk about something?
Yeah, right. Like, there doesn't need to be a gag here. I just want to know if you want the chicken or the sandwich.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, we did it with Weird Al. We did one with Joel McHale from Community. Fred Willard, rest in peace, did one early on. He was really funny. And then
there was the radio personality from Minnesota, Lilacs.
Oh yeah. He came down. That was it was sort of thrown into there. I think he was just a buddy of Mike's who came down and did one for Spider-Man. Has an amazing radio voice, like really that sort of
great voice. Yeah.
But then the one we came back from a weekend one time, and on the answering machine of the office or something was a message from Norm Macdonald that was just like, hey, RiffTrax, I got your message. That sounds really cool. Seemed interested, wanted us to call him back. I don't think he had, anything else going on, no disrespect or anything, but it was just like, hey, I want to do it, sure. And just, I don't think ever returned the follow-up call. I don't know if it was just, we called him at the right time, or he just, lost interest or left us the wrong number or something, but
still, he reached out to you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
No, we had emailed a packet out.
Okay.
We had been let's shoot big with some of these and stuff.
But still, that's awesome. I mean, that is shooting big.
He's the one guy, every time we do something at Sketchfest, we sometimes get some guests to do those with us. And I tell Cole Stratton, I think every year, the Sketchfest founder, I'm like, just let's get Norm next time.
Right. Just try. Just try. Yeah. I am going to get to patron questions too. I'm also having my own sort of fan moments. I wanted to ask before we get to patron questions, if you could walk me through the process, right? Like identifying what movies you're going to do, what it looks like as you're writing. I don't even know technically what you do.
Sure.
Right? Is it you have a document with timestamps?
What
does it look like?
It hasn't changed a lot since we've started doing it, but what we would do is we would divide up our script. We get these movies. I'll explain how we get to those in a minute, but we have anywhere from 5 to 7 writers on each movie, divided up in usually some equal time segments, and then that's sort of your section. So you just talk with people throughout about what running things are funny, something someone noticed in their section that they suggest you call back later, that type of thing.
So you actually get you have minute 20 to minute 50 type thing.
Yep.
Okay. Well, how long is your chunk usually?
Well, it just depends how long the movie is. We've done absolutely insane ones like Return of the King, where it was probably everyone had a good 50 minutes of things to come up with.
Sure.
And those are just you get to the end and someone's you're struggling with this thing, and then you review it and someone's like, oh, I made a joke about according to Jim, and someone's like, I did too, and you're like, now we have to rewrite all of those.
Which one? Yeah.
But sometimes it can be 20 minutes type of thing, and that's a good, nice, even chunk of time, and nothing. You don't strain, you don't start having to dig super deep for things. But then we write them separately. We'll combine them into the document, go through them with me and Mike and Sean. Sort of look at those redundancies, get rid of all the excess according to Jim jokes, and then I think Mike, Kevin, and Bill rehearse them in Minneapolis. Usually record them the next day after we've fielded any more pitches and changed anything else those guys didn't like or didn't want to say or didn't understand, type of thing.
Are they all 3 in Minneapolis right now?
Yep, they all have been back there for a while now. I think that Mike was the only one who ever moved to San Diego. They Kevin and Bill have lived there since then, and Mike and Bridget moved back after their sons finished high school,
okay.
Which is geez, probably 8 years ago now.
Okay.
I moved to.
So they're all in one studio.
Oh yeah.
Together.
Kevin has a really sweet home studio. He does all the music and stuff for RiffTrax too. So he's got a really cool build there. They had to do some remotely, obviously, last year, which like I never really watched our finished stuff, but I got the sense that like you could sort of tell some of those just based on like using a microphone that got settled for some of them. I think we did one of Aladdin. Like not the good Aladdin.
No, I watched that.
A Disney like in the studio Aladdin. I think someone could mention that, but maybe if you're not looking for it, you couldn't tell. I don't know.
I didn't notice anything. Yeah. That was a terrible movie.
It's Barry Bostwick as the genie, and a guy who never made another movie as Aladdin. And it's like not the Disney Channel, but it was like Disney made it, but it might have been one of those things where Roger Corman's Fantastic Four, where they like needed to make the movie so that like DreamWorks couldn't make it or something like that.
Right, just to like put the placeholder.
Yeah,
and it's like China, but it's the Middle East.
Yes, and of course they're all just as as Midwestern white as you can be. And then people are like, the Aladdin myth actually takes place in China, and I'm like, all right,
like okay, don't give them too much credit here.
Yeah.
They're not trying.
Spun a wheel, yeah. I mean, yeah, the movies, the good movie starts with the song Arabian Nights. Like that's what we're expecting here. I don't care.
Right, yeah. Well, and then let's see. The most recent one y'all put out that I watched was Max Havoc, Curse of the Dragon.
Sure. Max Havoc, yeah, Curse of the Dragon, because it's the first in the Max Havoc series. I
thought it sounded like a universe, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know what the next one's called. There are two, but this one was the one that was set in Guam, because Guam, if you go to the Wikipedia page, there's a lengthy lawsuit about like involving Carmen Electra and the film producers.
Because you'll reference things. It's like, what is this lawsuit?
It's ridiculous, because I watched the movie and I was like, well, Guam looks lovely, and then I looked it up and it was like, oh, it's incredibly expensive and long to get to. Like, I won't be going there unless someone asks me to be in Max Havoc 3 or something.
But I feel like if I did go there, I could stay at a place called Outrigger. Is that right?
Right. So they must have also been some sort of sponsor of this thing, or just like provide good rates to anyone making a movie type of thing. But it's weird when product placement is not something that you're. It's strange to see in movies, but it's strange when the product is Guam.
Yeah, right. And like a hotel, which actually I think it changed its name.
I'm sure, yeah. Out of shame, they probably got tired of people asking to stay in the Max Havoc suites, or like, the Dancing with the Stars woman suite.
I think we actually only see one suite. I think we only see Joanna Krupa's room, right? I don't think it actually goes in his room.
Were you familiar with her before this?
I think she was.
Okay. I was just like, all right. And then I looked her up. I was like, okay, maybe I had that issue of Maxim in college or something like that. But it's like, it's one of those times when you're like, oh, someone's wildly famous. I don't know if we ever acknowledged it during the movie, but it was like, I can see why she's, getting roles is this thing. She's, an attractive person who can, sell being the girlfriend in a Max Havoc movie, but
cannot act.
Right. Oh, no. And the accent sort of slips in and out.
Right.
Like,
this is weird.
No
one has a normal accent.
Yeah, everyone sounds like an off version of Tommy Wiseau throughout the entire thing, including the women. Her sister starts studying to be a heart surgeon, but she spends most of her time, like lounging around in a bikini. So, not that heart surgeons couldn't do that.
What is it about people in these bad movies and not being able to walk?
Now, where's that shop that gives lessons on how to walk like a human?
Yeah, I was explaining that to someone yesterday because we were family friends were talking about Birdemic, and so I sort of did an impression of that.
And it's not just him; it's because there's the guy, the assassin, and Max Havoc.
Yeah, the PS2 NPC.
Right.
Why does he walk like an NPC in a PlayStation 2 game?
But I think it's just. If you're not an actor, I mean, I'm not an actor, but when someone turns the camera on, I think you just start doing things differently. And it's like, no, we just need you to walk.
Right.
And you're like, okay, I got it this time. And then they do it and you just do the exact same thing again because you're in your own head. I'm sure that guy's like a talented like kung fu guy.
Sure. No. Well, and that's part of the thing too. And I actually think RiffTrax is really good about this, acknowledging these aren't like when we make fun of a movie, it's because someone stupid with money decided to put together this movie. Mm-hmm. But it's not to insult the talents outside of acting.
Yeah.
That the people involved might have.
Yes.
Right, because apparently like the Birdemic people were actually pretty gracious. Right?
Yeah, I think that, I think that's a lesson we learned. I think 15 years ago is a long time in real time. It's a very long time in sort of like what, in attitudes and stuff like that. So I was 25 when I started there, and I was just a few years removed from my like college, edgelord status. So I think you had to. There was a bit of a learning curve there. But yeah, Birdemic.
And if you all haven't seen Birdemic, it's a great start of RiffTrax.
Yes.
If you have not watched RiffTrax,
I'm pretty sure our live show is on the streaming platforms and stuff like that. But yeah, Whitney Moore she plays the lead in Birdemic,
right.
Who's a very nice person. I met her at Comic-Con one time. She was going to do a live read for one of our 372 live shows of an Ernest Cline poem, but it fell through. But yeah, again, Gracious has gone on to do cool things. You have to assume that most of these people are like anyone would do if some guy was like, I'm going to make a movie. Do you want to be in it? Would be like, that sounds fun.
Sure, right.
It won't end up being the worst thing in the world, will it? And then some of them end up looking like that. So you can't really blame them. And like you said, most of these people are people with money. We get a shockingly high number of guys who are usually guys, want to write, direct, and star. They also probably do the editing. Yeah, but also, James Wynn puts himself in his movies. There's a guy, Neil Breen, who makes these awful movies. Neil Breen makes. We've never been able to do them. He won't let us do them. He's
right, because you have to have permission to actually do the VODs. Right?
Yes, and it's been always just. He's at the point. He writes back emails that are just like all caps, like I will never. he's an odd guy, but his movies are. I can't remember the names of them, but they're well worth seeking out. He plays the same character in every movie, sort of a messianic hacker who's gets the girl. They have to be seen to believe. But
talking like 90s. What era are we talking?
Oh, I believe he's probably released a new movie within the past 3 years. He's been making them for the throughout the 2000s. But yeah, I do feel like we've hopefully come some ways in terms of like making stuff that's a little less punchy down and more, more just like having fun with this thing rather than trying to rip it.
Sure. And I guess I'm not talking about punching down or whatever. I just mean like I always feel like you've actually done a great job of remembering, it's people, right? And we're not saying like you're dumb or you're bad.
Right.
It's like just, someone with a camcorder filmed you not really knowing how to act.
Right.
And we can all have fun with this.
Yes. I think that it's a lot of the things are probably end up being like you watching the movies that you made when you were 12, with your parents' camcorder, which if you can't laugh at that, I don't know what to tell you to. Yeah. So, hopefully that's what these end up being for a lot of people who probably didn't think they were making high art when they decided to make, a werewolf movie set in Massachusetts. So like, I think that's hopefully like they had a good time. They had a good time with the premiere. Maybe they can have another good time like when they watch this and like hear a joke cracked about their accent or something.
Sure. Not everybody's Jordan Baker, right?
Exactly.
Which is a infamous episode from the Amos 50 Greatest. Okay, let me see what we got for questions here. I'm just geeking out on the RiffTrax connection here. Hey everybody, how we doing? I think they're mostly talking to each other.
Oh, come on.
Okay, Vicky, MST3K always seems spontaneous. How much of it is actually scripted?
No,
it sounds like all of it.
No, I think that. I can't speak for MST, but I think it's pretty much the same exact way, other than like some ad libs and interjections like that. We scripted pretty tightly. Like I think we've done things that are sort of watch-alongs and stuff like that. And my fear is that you always will be saying something like, hey, look at that guy, as they're about to deliver a line that would set up like 10 more potential like runners and callbacks type of thing.
Right.
But not to say that people would not be talented improvisers and performers. I think that to get the best product, it often helps to sort of plan it out. And sometimes like you'll be tossing out lines in a room, someone will come up with something great on the spot. Other times you'll think about lines for all of 10 minutes, get annoyed with each other, retreat back to your own separate areas, and then that's when like the real weird thing will click that fits the moment perfectly. Sure. Sometimes it just can be hard if you're putting the pressure on yourself to say it to someone's face.
Well, and if they are recording all together, there is actual interaction real time, and I do often feel like they're laughing, like they genuinely can't stop actually laughing. It's like someone else said, like for instance in Max Havoc, like this whole, David Carradine incident. There's all the hanging stuff, right? Like someone's gonna hang.
Yeah, I think that those are genuine moments, and I think. We went back and looked at that again because there's always one person who's like, "That's a little too far," and I'm like, "You have to understand, it wasn't a act of self-harm. He was doing this as its own. If you, I don't want to dig myself in a deep hole, but if you can't find that somewhat funny, like I believe that film producers by the end were like putting clauses in the contract about like he needs to have supervision because we're worried that something's going to happen on one of these sets. So, but yeah, so to answer that question, a lot of it is planned ahead of time. There's always going to be some ad libs, and we've had great moments of live shows where wild stuff has happened that's caused either audience reactions where like the laughter sort of overwhelms things and that gets contagious type of thing.
Sure.
Or I'm thinking about it. There's a famous moment in one of our Christmas live shows where Santa says, "I need you tonight," to Rudolph, like sitting on his bed like this, and the audience just lost their shit. And like,
what can you do?
The next 3 lines are just like, "Sorry, folks. Like maybe we'll do this again someday. You'll get to hear what we had planned there, but it wasn't going to be as funny as that."
No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and Neil had such great guests on those live shows too. I mean, just like I'm sure that can't always be as perfectly coordinated.
Yeah, and having some of the funniest people in the world on the stage, like Paul F. Tompkins, John Hodgman, David Cross, Bob Odenkirk, like
just
whatever.
Just Tompkins on that one, the paper bag one, is just slaughters me.
But yeah, so whatever they want to say, you've got to let them do it. But I will add that we did a sketch fest show one time, and we had Todd Barry come in, who's a very dry, very funny comedian, known for his crowd work. And he was like, "Oh, so like, I might just want to throw in my own things here," and sat with us throughout the rehearsal. And we sort of we read it, and he didn't really chime in with his lines. We're like, "Oh, I think he hated everything we wrote for him. He's going to come back and." We'd read the lines in the rehearsal, and he'd sit there, and his line would come, and we would and it would go, and then the next person would read their line. But then he came into the thing the next day, and I think he realized it was just sort of like, oh, this is sort of a machine that if I start like just yelling shit out whenever I want to, it's not going to flow with the rest of stuff. So I guess he said the lines that we had written. They got good laughs. Everyone went home happy. So I think you can have it both ways, but this is the way we do it.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
How many times do you wind up watching
the movies to do them? I mean, so I've been working on something called Baby Ghost now, and so it's by the Roller Gator director. I'm sure you're familiar with Roller Gator.
Yes,
I was
familiar with
substantially worse than Roller Gator. But so I've been watching that, 25 minutes of it, like for the past couple days. I'll watch the whole movie once we review it, and then once we rehearse it, type of thing. And then I will probably never watch it again because it's Baby Ghost and it's worse than Roller Gator. But we watch them to screen them and approve them, type of thing. So it just depends really where you are in the movie. Like if I had the first part of Baby Ghost, I might not even know what happens. We did one called San Francisco, and I didn't even know what happened at the end because I went out of town and never got to see the.
That's like the last one.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that one.
So I was like, the ending was a surprise to me. So. But usually it's not a matter of like watching them hit front to back over and over again to try to like do that. It's just it's a more of a deep dive on a specific moment.
And side question to that, I know I have a lot of my own questions, but again, big fan. So, and maybe this is opening a can of worms for you, but as far as picking movies, do people like approach you and say, "Hey, please do this"? Does that factor into it, or is it kind of like you have like a pipeline?
So both. People recommend stuff, and like we've gotten some of our best titles by people recommending them, because I don't think a lot of us who are at RiffTrax, like I think on the writing and performing side, don't wallow in this stuff as much as some other people. We do have people like video editors I forget his exact title, but the guy who created our website and has created all the technology for it is Eric. Loves this type of stuff, so he will seek out stuff and recommend it to us. But I'm more of someone who like sees what fans recommend, and then we'll check it out rather than like trying to do a deep dive into like the utter cesspool of like D-list movies.
Just going to like IMDb and ranking all movies by least ranking.
Yeah, right. But then once you do that, you have to find out who has it. And so sometimes distributors will be like, here's some things we think you'll like. That's where like Max Havoc came from. And then, you know, you got to deal with them. Sometimes people will be like, I have a movie, it's bad. Do you want to do it? And to me, I'm always like, I'm like, it's like, have some dignity.
Right. Yeah.
But we did a live show, one called Saber Rain, which was Casper Van Dien, and like, it was made just a couple of years ago, even though it looks like a 90s CD-ROM game.
That was the subject of some jokes, yeah.
But that worked out well. I think he sort of knew what he had. It was, you know, it was better than anything I could do graphics-wise. It just wasn't a good movie.
Right.
So yeah, it's a mix of all those things. Once someone does recommend a movie, then you have to find out who has it, if anyone. So you're able to do it. So
it does seem like you were doing fewer of the like big box office movies now.
Yeah,
because you would just do the audio commentaries for those, right? Because you don't need rights to do that, right? Because it's like a commentary.
That was what we started doing. Like, because when we started, it was 2006, and like, you know, Netflix was not streaming at that point in time, and you know, you could do like, there was a service called Divx that would like had DRM on it that you could, you know, sort of watch on your laptop. But we started mostly doing shorts as a way to do that, because I mean, it was still like a 90 megabyte file download, which not everyone was able to do back in that day. And so yeah, we got to do a ton of those bad and, you know, and fun Hollywood movies. You know, so Transformers movies, yes, but also, you know, the Lord of the Rings movies, Jaws,
which are great.
You know, Matrix movies
in your RiffTrax. Yeah, because like anything, I feel like any fantasy sci-fi thing that sort of sets up a weird world, right? I feel like those are the perfect RiffTrax.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and Star Wars are perfect for those, because they, you know, you have the good ones you enjoy, the bad ones you don't, and then you can just, if you do them all, you can have, you know, running jokes about the stuff from the first movies throughout the prequels. We did the most recent ones type of thing, and we're still talking about, you know, Kit Fisto as we go into like The Force Awakens and stuff like that. Still talking about whenever they say like, you know, we can only pray that this happens. Like, who exactly are they praying to? Like, you know.
Right. My favorite thing with the prequels was the parts where y'all just stop. It's like, folks, just get some popcorn, because it's just 20 minutes of like galactic politics. Like, just, we don't know what to do with this. Just if you need to use the bathroom.
Yeah, it's I mean, I talk about movies that I haven't seen again since then, and probably won't until like, you know, my nephew wants to watch him when he's 10 or something. When I'll be like, you really
Attack of the Clones.
But you know, there's that sort of revisionist. You know, these are for kids, and my kid loves them. It's like, well, your kid has terrible taste. I don't know what to tell you. Like, and do they really like watching politics and Jar Jar Binks lead a vote in the Senate? Like, it boggles the mind.
Because while those scenes are going, they're actually like doing the lightsaber fights with the toys.
Right? Yeah, I guess
they're not really watching that.
Vicky asks, are the film parodies in the old Mad magazines an inspiration behind any of this? I can't help but be reminded of parodies like The Empire Strikes Out.
Blockhead too.
I mean, I used to check out Mad magazine from the library, and me and Mike work on our podcast with a guy who used to do cartoons for Mad magazine. But directly, I don't know. I assume that probably everyone on the staff read Mad at some point in time, and, you know, probably shaped their humor to some degree.
Sure. No, I mean, I know. I certainly did. I think we're about the same age.
Yeah.
Like, I remember those things being like, I remember actual physical magazines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I liked them because I was sort of like, my parents like didn't necessarily approve, so I wanted to read them regardless of what they were. I also had Spy versus Spy on the Commodore 64, so that was a probably not a great game, but it was fun for a 7-year-old.
No, that definitely takes me back to a certain place in my life. So, were you a big MST3K fan too?
No, I didn't have cable.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
My family did not have cable, and then occasionally would get it sporadically. So, but I do remember hearing about it. I remember a specific kid on the bus in probably like, I was 4th grade. I was 5th grade. He was 4th grade, talking about it. A guy and two robots like crack jokes during this movie. It was his favorite show, and that's my first memory of it. And I went over to another friend's house in high school, and her brother had rented the movie from Blockbuster,
The Silent Earth.
Yes. Which again, people also say is a good movie, and it's like I don't know what to tell you. Using a sliding scale here, but I watched that, remembered really liking it, but just, you know, it wasn't part of my circle. Like, you know, I watched The Simpsons because it was on for an hour every day, followed by Seinfeld for an hour every day. So those are the two things that I sort of like, had force fed to me and shaped my sense of humor.
Right. I mean, the first ones I encountered too, because we didn't have cable like at my house, but the ones that were on VHS, right? It's like the Silent Earth, Pot People, right? Were some of the first ones I saw, and then like it was always when we were in hotels.
Oh wow!
Or like at a friend's house.
Yeah,
to watch on cable.
Yeah, it was a treat. That's one of my favorite things about doing this is when people do bring younger kids to the shows. And, I always am pretty much writing for myself and being like, well, I'm doing things that make me laugh and hopefully that's going to find an audience. But when there is a younger person there, it does sort of like, warm the heart to think that maybe you're like that for somebody else who's growing up and shaping their sense of humor type of thing.
That's a fun thought.
And then it's like, what does that kid think when I'm making jokes about like lunars and weird internet things or Sonic the Hedgehog getting pregnant type of thing? And it's like, well, that warms my heart too, I guess, to some degree.
Well, by the way, folks, feel free to just pitch in questions in the commentary or in the ask question.
What is a lunar?
What is a yeah? It's like let's. But that does bring me to your podcast that you do.
That's a nice transition.
Yeah,
great.
Tell us a little bit about 372 pages.
Yeah, that's 372 pages. We'll Never Get Back is the podcast that me and Mike Nelson from RiffTrax do. It is theme of it is essentially a book club, but for books that we're not expecting that we're going to like. And we started it, we just hit our 100th episode a month or so ago.
With Model Land.
Model Land by Tyra Banks is the book we're currently reading, to give you a sense of what we do. But it started with reading Ready Player One, when that sort of started to get its first like pushback.
Right. It
was when the movie was about to come out and people were like, you know what, this book wasn't actually really good. Like, read this excerpt. And I'm like, you know who would hate this book? It's Mike. We should try this out. So yeah, we've read, I believe, 17 books, for the podcast. We usually, we give our listeners a assignment every week to read. So then they write in their thoughts, their dumb sentences. We do sketches based on the worlds of these books, and they've been we've sort of done a pattern of reading big books like Model Land. Well, I mean, Tyra Banks that book probably hit a bestseller list.
Because of the author.
Right.
Yeah.
Model Land, Ready Player One and Ready Player Two. We read Tech War by William Shatner. We read Sean Penn's book, Bob Honey Who Just Do Stuff, which is dreadful. And then we've mixed those with some more obscure books that you only find on Amazon. And these are, to me, the other books are a lot of fun. It's very fun to examine whatever Sean Penn thought would make a good novel. But then you find some of these books on Amazon that are self-published, not knocking that. I've self-published several books. But the idea that anyone would find them and read them, and then we get to like sort of bring them to light is just incredible. Probably my favorite is the Certified Public Accountant and the Cremated 64 Squares documents. And this is written by a guy who...
That's the title.
Yes, that's the title. And the main character is a certified public accountant, forensic certified public accountant, and global services management accountant. And it will not surprise you that the author is also all of those three things. And it reads like, I told, when Mike got it, he was just like, what did you send me? It looks like a manifesto has been written. And it's just hard to really imagine that someone put this into the world and thought it would find an audience. And then yet it did through our podcast.
I mean, the thing is, like, if you don't have a certain filter, I sort of understand, like, I'm going to write something about fictionalize me and put it out there. I mean, when I was in college, I wrote a novel that happened to be about a somewhat like Western cowboyish guy who had a PhD in Old Norse and solves murders or whatever, right? I mean, with runes, it was not great.
Well, that's at least solving murders with runes is a nice twist on everything.
Yeah, I guess. No one will ever see that. Like, I don't pretend that that's something that needs like.
You can submit it to the podcast under a pseudonym, and
nope. Like, I wouldn't do that to anyone, especially myself.
Trinae wants to know, before the Crowdcast, I wasn't aware of this. Where can I watch it? So,
what, RiffTrax?
Well, yeah, RiffTrax is just rifftrax.com.
Yeah, and RiffTrax is also on Amazon Prime. You can go to Tubi, Tubi. You can find them on Pluto TV or Samsung TV.
There's an app on Roku.
There's a Roku channel. You can look it up on twitch.tv/RiffTrax. So there's all sorts of places. But we also have our own streaming service, which is $6 a month, and you can watch pretty much everything that's older than 3 years.
That's really
RiffTrax
Friends.
RiffTrax Friends. So that's like the best deal in streaming, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. Well, and then for some of them, you have to have the movie.
For some of them, yeah. We don't do this too often, but if it's a movie you've heard of, you probably might need to have the DVD and watch it, and then you sync up an MP3 to watch those. But there's a ton of VODs on the website that you can watch. Oh, and we're doing a live show in like 3.5 weeks. We're doing a live show of a movie called Hobgoblins, which is a late 80s Gremlins ripoff.
I remember this from its MST3K.
Yeah,
days.
it was an MSD, and I don't think there's anything else you can say that other than it's a Gremlins ripoff with less dynamic puppets.
Less dynamic people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is an awful movie.
Yeah.
I look forward to this.
The director's going to be there. He's bringing the puppets, so I'm looking forward to meeting the puppets.
And this is the kind of great, like, tiny fandom you can get into. Like, I get to meet the Hobgoblins puppets, right? I mean, that's pretty special.
Yeah, I he makes movies that are not my favorites, but I mean, the puppets are going to be kind of cool to take a picture with. So,
Did you get to meet the CGI hawks from Birdemic?
no, only met Whitney. I've never met any of the other people involved with that, like James Wynn. I'm not sure what his deal is, but sometimes you just want to keep a distance from some of these people.
Might be best. Oh, you've never met Tommy Wiseau?
I never have. A lot of people at RiffTrax have.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Through the virtue of like getting to do a live show at a room, someone who works at RiffTrax has gotten into the Tommy Wiseau camp and now sort of has managed some of his live events and stuff like that. So I've never been out there when that happened, but
What elevated company?
yeah. But other people have met Greg Sestero and stuff like that. I read his book; that was great. But there's just somewhat of a distance I feel like you want to keep just from. It's hard to get too chummy with some people who just spent, a movie like sort of insulting their work.
Yeah, right. Well, and some seem less stable than others.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
A little bit.
Right. You don't want people to make a movie that's self-aware, but at least you want people to be self-aware. Like the Saber Rain guy came to the live show. It was very nice.
Yeah, and he's been in some large movies like Starship Troopers, right?
No, I'm sorry. The director of Saber Rain,
director.
not Casper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, he was not. Other people have come to theaters. Like I think the Samurai Cop guy came and watched ours in the theater in LA. But
And then the podcast is just anywhere you get podcasts you can find.
oh yes,
372
yeah, that's anywhere.
pages.
And 372pages.com.
And y'all have a Patreon.
We did patreon.com/372pages.
And Marcel wants to know if the detective story exists somewhere. If you're talking about mine, no. Although it was written actually as a creative final project for a class in college.
Oh, so it could be someone on a server somewhere.
It's not likely though. Thank God.
I think for a while, if you searched for me, you got like a proposal I had written about in a final senior year paper or something about Lyndon Johnson, where I had really checked out of college, and I think that's down off of UVA servers now at this point in time. So
Good. Yeah, now unfortunately this has evolved into people trying to figure out how much they can basically raise Patreon's bar, right? Go to $100 tier to
Oh,
buy
wow.
a novel.
okay.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Let's see. Lorian says the humor in MST3K is so sharp, irreverent, and no subject wasn't open to poking fun at. Do you think this humor only exists in alternate platforms like Amazon Prime?
Do you mean instead of like being on TV these days?
I guess. I mean, there is the.
Actually, might have misinterpreted my answer to where you find this. Oh, yeah, I don't know. I mean, she says yes, right?
Yeah.
I feel like, it's a hard sell to do. I mean, Comedy Central used to devote 2-hour block to airing MST3K.
Sure.
I think it just might, and Netflix did not pick up the new one, the new MST past another season. I don't know, but I'm grateful that we don't have to deal with a network and get to do it online.
Of course.
We have done that a couple times. We showed some stuff on the National Geographic Channel that was making fun of some of their old programs. They had some really ridiculous stuff on there. And just the idea of, like I said before, we say stuff that we think is funny and that amuses us, and hopefully that finds an audience. And when VPs and National Geographic or whatever channel are like, we don't get this, we don't like it, why don't you change it to something about like that Olivia Rodrigo my kids are listening to? Then it's amazing how quickly I go from being like a happy-go-lucky guy to being like, I'm furious when someone else is trying to tell you what to do.
Yeah, I don't know anything about middlemen screwing things up. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah, the more people that you put between the creative person and the audience that wants what they're creating, the more trouble.
Yeah.
Right.
And it makes you appreciate the great things that do get made. It makes you appreciate that something like Anchorman or like Rick and Morty has been allowed to come and exist. On those extremely popular channels. When you see sort of what happens into any minor thing getting tweaked along the way.
Well, and when you know what kind of people are chomping their cigars in their suits and saying, I don't get it.
Right, exactly. I don't get it. And then when it gets produced and is successful, I made that.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's because I signed the bottom line. Yeah.
Right. I think that there's definitely a place that it could air. I'm sure if a network wanted to take a risk on it, but I think that we're pretty happy getting to do it on our own terms.
I'm glad that you do.
Yeah, thanks.
Generic question. Favorite movies you've done? Or favorite tracks you've done?
Oh, man. Yeah.
Or favorite. You already mentioned a favorite book you did on the podcast.
Yeah, that book, I'll talk about a couple more. There's one called Trucking Through Time that you would probably appreciate, as these two truckers, Chad and Dale, go back to, I believe, South Dakota or Wyoming, and end up encountering Sitting Bull or rescuing him as a kid. They make the claim that every restaurant in Wyoming, if you flip over the menu, has a story of some sort of tragedy occurring.
Slightly true. Wait, that's on 372 pages?
Yeah.
How did I miss this?
I don't have the book anymore, otherwise I'd send you home with it. But
I would be so delighted.
It's written by the former equipment manager of the Tennessee Volunteers football team. And then Charles E. Harris, he wrote a book, and I guess his kids published it. He's no longer with us, but very good-natured, very charming, but just was biting off a bit more than he could chew in terms of telling his story.
Trucking Through Time. That could almost be the name of like a podcast I would do.
Yeah, it was. Someone recommended that one to us, and it was just like, how can we resist? Movies, though, it's honestly hard to tell. Birdemic, I mention all the time. Of course. I think that we've done some really amazing shorts. One of my favorite shorts is called Setting Up a Room.
Yeah,
which is
it's almost psychedelic.
It's a weird fugue state of a short. It's intended ostensibly to show professional teachers how to set up their kindergarten classroom before a school year starts, which no teacher would ever need to have this doing. But they show it sort of in real time, these two women moving about their room and debating where to put the block corner and pegboards. But it's just you can imagine professionals sitting and watching it being like, what on earth? We did another one called along the same lines called Buying Food, which is about a gentleman named Henry Slinkman, whose wife sends him to the store. It's black and white. It's probably from like 1961 or something. And it's just about how to go to the store and buy food. And it offers tips like, don't buy something if you've never tried it, or don't buy too much of something.
Oh, this is like the witch that's in the grocery store in that live one.
Very much, yeah.
Okay. I haven't seen this one.
It's terrific. He goes to the store and his wife's just like, get some food, and he screws it up. So he's like, Henry likes oysters. He'll take 3 pints of them. He's never seen this vegetable before. Looks good. He'll take 2.
All right.
But and then we did one. This was a real treat. Me and Sean Thomason, who's the other writer who doesn't perform.
Hilarious Twitter follow.
Oh, nice. Yeah, he's great. But we did one that was a short that I had seen. My cousin had it in his basement. Like his mom brought it
the internet
school. That was not. This was Bicycle Safety Camp, where a guy raps about bicycle safety to a assembled crowd of like kids who embody the early 90s like no other could in terms of their dress, their tank tops, their like San Jose Sharks looking gear. So that was a real treat to be like, I watched this in my cousin's basement and made fun of it when I was 10, and now we put it out on the site.
Gosh.
So that was a real treat.
So it's like Royal Gator fashion.
Yeah, it's really, and that type of rap too. Like the rapping it does not increase in talent level from Roller Gator.
I love the internet one, by the way.
That was great. That was one that people recommended, and I was like, well, this is right in our wheelhouse. Like I still remember using that exact service and going to some of those websites.
Are you and Sean going to start hosting more?
We have we got another one planned that I really need to get to work on. We're doing a short that's all about economics taught to you by San Diego Chicken. He was the early 80s like baseball mascot, like the sort of, I don't know if he was before the Philly Fanatic, but he was along the same lines, like the bad boy of mascots. So I'm looking forward to doing that one.
I look forward to that with relish.
Yeah, I've got to get the ball rolling. But other than that, I mean, I feel we've just done so many things that there's not really a lot of wrong you can do if you check one out. Like
No.
and I never go back and watch them. But Fun in Balloon Land is another one.
Fun in Balloon Land is a great one, and it's a nice medium length.
Yeah,
like if you're not quite
thank
sure.
God.
Yeah, okay. But if you're not quite sure, like if you've never seen RiffTrax before, Fun in Balloon Land actually is a nice start because it's like 25 minutes. So it's not a short. Like 25, 30? I can't remember.
Maybe you probably like blacked out and came to it. So I think it might be closer to 50.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that's when I made my family watch at some point in time, and It's a Wonderful Life we did last year is just another testament to these are not all terrible movies. These are just things we're having fun with.
And Casablanca.
Yeah. But yeah, good opportunities to do impressions and to just sort of put a new spin on something everyone's seen a dozen times to make it just a new way to view it.
Right. I mean, there's definitely movies I would never watch without RiffTrax, which, by the way, includes some pretty mainstream fantasy.
Okay, all right.
Right, like Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah.
I can't, I don't know how I can sit through that without RiffTrax. Like, the movies are actually surprisingly repetitive in a way to me, right?
Mm-hmm. That's why we spaced them out when we did them, because it was like, even if we're going to make a similar joke, but now we've forgotten about it, so we don't feel bad.
Right. That does make sense. But, I mean, y'all make it great. And again, that's also one of those things where there's enough of a sort of world to it that there's just tons of stuff you can kind of pull from the atmosphere for. Right?
Yeah, and when you start to
take
it, when you take it at face value too, it's like there's a lot of things that just like, if you do want to pull a few threads, like it unravels pretty quickly.
Right. No, and I think it's right. Like taking it at face value, because of course, so many of these movies are assuming, like Lord of the Rings movies, I think are guilty of this, assuming that you're coming in with all these background things. Because I'd never read Lord of the Rings when I saw those movies when they came out when I was in high school or college, I can't remember now. And I sat there like, I don't know what just happened. Someone fought a orc.
Right. And now an eye is angry? I don't understand.
It wasn't until after I'd read the books that I understood the movies, which I think is a little bit of a weakness in the movies. But I mean, it's so great to just watch it with the RiffTrax because it's like there's no understanding what it's saying.
Right. Yeah, or no understanding, or just like insane deep cuts about like Gone Burry Gone and Tom Bombadil type of thing. So it's fun to have it both ways in that department.
And MST3K always had those deep cuts too. Like my favorite MST3K episode, which let's see if I can bump it a little bit, is Jack Frost.
Okay,
season 8.
I've not seen it.
It's great.
Okay.
It's Russian myth.
Okay.
It's one of those movies made during USSR period that's released through Finland. So it's like supposedly Finnish, but it's totally Russian.
Okay.
Right. It's traditional Russian. Vicky, who's here, knows what I'm talking about. Oh, she's her favorite too.
Oh, nice.
She's a professor of Russian. But it's Russian. It's real Russian myth, but like filtered through this ridiculous, like almost. I guess it's probably a better movie technically than something like Birdemic. Yeah, but it's still not great.
Yeah.
But there's so many deep cut things. I don't know. They just hit a stride with that one.
That's
like
great.
Tons of Bible things, of Lord of the Rings things.
Yeah, I would put in something today that was a reference to the death drums of Lud. Anyone know what I'm talking about with that? There's a thing on the soundtrack of Baby Ghost that sounds like the death drums.
Let's see. This is an interesting crowd. They might know what you're talking about. The pause.
Getting a lot of encouraging silence. And I think it's from the third book in the Dark Tower by Stephen King.
They've been talking about Dark Tower a lot.
Okay, yeah.
So okay.
But there was something this town, a computer loop is playing the drum track of a ZZ Top song, and every time they do it, one sect of this town executes somebody because they think it's a sacrifice or something like that. But the soundtrack of Baby Ghost really sounds like it. Anyway, maybe I'll reconsider that. Hey, but hey, it makes me laugh, and it just, if you don't like it, there's another joke in 10 seconds. So.
Right. Well, and some of my favorite RiffTrax were movies that just, I was grading or something, and I'm like, what's the latest thing? And I just found something I never would have watched that was sort of entertaining, showed me a bizarre corner of the world.
Yeah.
Like, y'all did a bunch of movies that were filmed in South Africa that weren't supposed to be South Africa.
Oh, good Lord, yeah. The kids' movies. Like
Yeah,
the Little
yeah.
Unicorn and...
Harry King.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was also Prisoners of the Lost Universe.
Yeah, that was pretty early on.
That was a wild ride.
What was the... was that the one with the guy has like kendo stick? Yeah. And was he somebody? Was he like a 70s actor or something? I don't know. Anyway.
But no, you broke my kendo stick. Yeah, that's a plot point somehow.
Right.
Yeah, and he's an electrician, which is a plot point somehow. Yeah. That was terrible. And then I ruthlessly, relentlessly put Friends through a talking cat.
Oh wow!
At Santa's summer house.
I should have probably mentioned those as a favorite.
I have a theory, and maybe you can confirm this, that those movies were made the same weekend in the same Airbnb.
Yeah, I mean the house is a house that gets rented out for all types of movies.
Okay, clearly.
So, and I don't know if the guy owns it or not. If he owns it, it was up for sale recently, and it was many millions of dollars. So if he owns it, obviously there's no justice in the world. It's like, because that guy should not be able to afford that.
No,
it's a nice, obviously it's a nice portion of land. It's not tastefully decorated, but like it's a large house.
Well, it must be in a beautiful spot. It must be like around Malibu.
Yeah, it probably is. But yeah, I don't know anything about the schedule, but I do think it was, just like we've got for the weekend, like get in here. Eric Roberts will not be here. He's recording his lines, in a public restroom somewhere. But
that's the thing about humans. And then Cynthia Rothrock as Mrs. Claus.
God, and that was it Steve McQueen's son, or was it Robert Mitchum's son? I think was Santa Claus in that movie.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It was Robert Mitchum's son.
And I am shamed because the director of those movies is not really named Crawford, but took the pseudonym Crawford.
Mary Crawford, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a guy named David.
But it took the pseudonym Mary Crawford, shaming my family. I was terribly offended. But no, typically if I'm introducing someone to RiffTrax, I start with Birdemic, and then I say, okay, like blue pill or red pill.
Right. Was that too bad or not bad enough?
Right. It wasn't quite bad enough. Talking cat is
right. Well, that's sort of another reason it's good to do some of those bigger movies, because people sometimes it's if you're watching again Anaconda, Harry Potter, The Matrix, nothing is going to be visually offensive to you the way that watching a movie that was recorded on a 240p resolution with a camcorder that the lens cover is sort of partially over is going to be like look on your 40-inch TV. So
and for the record, if you're interested in one of those bigger movies that's got just the audio track they play along with it, personal recommendations for me would include really any of the Harry Potter's. Prisoner of Azkaban's really good.
Okay.
And then Two Towers.
Nice.
Well, what about you?
Oh man, well I love some of the better movies we've done. I like Jaws a lot. That was a lot of fun. I think It's a Wonderful Life is one of those movies, but it's on the website. I don't think you should watch the Transformers movies, but I think we made them funny.
I still haven't even subjected myself to the RiffTrax.
I think Michael Bay came out with something recently, did he? But I saw something ranking his movies, and I was shocked that they just kept making them. I think there was 6 total now. I think like they got Marky Mark involved. They got dinosaur Transformers and stuff, and I was like, well, I'm glad that we said enough was enough. We did 3 of them, and
is there any cast continuity? I mean.
I think they must just leap ahead in time. I don't know. Maybe Shia LaBeouf returns and people are like, it's him again. Like, I can't imagine, but like, I mean, they kicked out Megan Fox after the first two and brought in another, woman for him to, scream no at type of thing. So, but yeah, I would say like, as an in, it could be worth trying, Raiders of the Lost Ark or something like that.
That was a good one.
Fun time with the movie than it is just talking about how it sucks.
Well, like I said, it doesn't have to be a bad movie.
Yeah.
My assistant Stella is a huge fan of Berserker Hell's Warrior.
Okay.
The RiffTrax thereof.
Okay.
By the way, because of course that kind of touches on our subject material.
Yeah.
I thought I saw.
I don't remember a thing about that one.
Stella, in fact, this is Stella, my assistant. I think my favorite RiffTrax memory is still watching Berserker Hell's Warrior while drinking whiskey and getting increasingly amazed how many of the jokes were actually right about intending to be.
What, were jokes talking about how the movie was inaccurate, probably?
Yeah, it's not that hard to be inaccurate when you're doing stuff. That and all the jokes about randomly screaming Odin whenever you just need to spice up your life.
The Odin sleep.
Oh my God.
Is that accurate? I just thought it was very funny.
No, there's no Odin sleep. it might be a Marvel thing.
The look of disgust.
But I was telling Connor earlier when I taught Old Norse language at UCLA, that was actually a reward to my students at the end of second quarter, was we would always watch the full RiffTrax.
Wow. Let me get one more thing to ask you if it's accurate.
Oh boy.
Over here.
Trey asks, have you done Snatch?
No, I'll be right back. We've not. I don't know if you'd be able to make jokes about, because you won't be able to understand Brad Pitt the entire time. But I did see those in college, and I had a Snatch poster on my wall. Shall we say, yeah, we tried to go to the theater. It didn't work out, so we came home and got drunk, and like some things happened that night that like my roommates bought me the Snatch poster afterwards to commemorate the evening. So are these accurate? Norse myths. I'm just curious if
We need to do a crossover where we go through some of these.
that's where Thor transforms into the frog. Yeah.
This is a whole long let's talk crossover.
We'll
We'll table this. Yeah.
Those are just accessible in my house.
Stella says, well, especially they thought they were making fun of Odin, but a lot of the jokes are actually right. Like there's one like, you're not supposed to kill them and hope they speak as they die. Like, well, Norse sagas, they might actually recite you a whole poem on the way down.
No, all right.
Which is sort of true. Well, it's been real fun talking to you.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been fun to get to do this. I'm glad that fortuitous Jeopardy. If I couldn't win Jeopardy, at least I got to meet someone nice.
You actually got to be on Jeopardy.
Yeah.
You've met Alex Trebek.
Yeah, it was nice. I gave him a high five. And then sometimes they use that clip in their commercials. So I ask you, would you rather live on in Jeopardy lore in the high-fiving Trebek clip, or would you have been the guy that beat me and won like $170,000 in 24 hours? I'd go with the guy.
I was going to say.
Consolation prize
But you got a consolation.
$2,000 in the high-five Trebek.
Well, thanks very much for hanging out with us. Thanks, Patreon.
Yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for the questions.
It is the 15th anniversary of RiffTrax tonight, so there is a live event.
Yeah, I don't know how to tell you how to get there, but if you go to Twitter/RiffTrax or Facebook.com/RiffTrax, it's probably on our homepage right now. You can watch Twilight with us tonight if you have a Netflix account.
I'll be there.
Great.
Right. Yeah. Patreon, thanks so much.
Thank you.
And from beautiful Virginia, wishing you all the best.